Hello and welcome to the latest Exchange Wire Vox Pop. I am delighted to be joined today by Rob Beeler from Beeler.Tech, who is going to be taking a central role at ATS London. Rob, thank you very much for joining us.
Really looking forward to our conversation and looking forward to June. I'm looking forward to the event.
Great to have you. If you give us a quick overview of Beeler.Tech before we start, and then we'll get into some in-depth questions.
Yeah, great question. So Beeler.Tech is a community of publishers. So I work with publishers around the world, really focused on operational focused conversations and topics. And that can range from AI to how do I pull a report? And it's a wide range of conversations that we have on a weekly basis. And from that, what I do is I try to find out what really is going on and share that with technology partners. I write a lot, do a lot of events, and all of it really is just about really trying to figure this out so that publishing can be like a thriving business, right? I kind of feel like users aren't doing less internet; they're doing more internet. And if I can help people who create content, invest in creating content, I'm doing my job to help bring all that about.
Amazing. Well, thanks again for joining us. And as you've mentioned, you're heavily involved in the publishing industry. And at the moment, we're seeing with deprecation of cookies and the rise of first-party data, we're seeing publishers' role changing slightly. Do you think that the publishers are finding themselves in this new position of strength now in this new world?
So the answer on that is kind of a yes or no, and I feel like there's a part where I don't know that how many people are going to go out there right now and say they feel stronger, but I do feel like there are a couple of key things underpinning things that we have to bring up, which I feel that like consent isn't king, right? I think content is king and context is king. So maybe it's multiple. And again, maybe I'm in coronation mode here. I don't know. But there's a piece of it that consent and actually getting a person to say, yes, you can use my data is going to be one of the biggest skills that publishers have to develop. And once they've done that, they really need to protect that and create that trust, right? And in the process, they shouldn't just turn around and give that away. Oh, I've got consent to serve ads using data and so forth. Who wants to use my data isn't how we should work. It should really be that publishers, it's going to be a privilege to work with publishers that are able to get consent to do things with data. And so I feel like that is a position of strength that they're going to have. I also feel like, people do buy first party data today. I just think that they trust third party data more. And I think we'll dive into that a little bit further, but there's a piece of that of just going like, I just sit there and think that there's going to be more publisher first party data signal that's going to drive the ecosystem. And so I do think that that's an actual opportunity. That being said, some publishers are going to give it all away. They're just going to take everything I just said and just give it away. And that's really our competition within the publisher world, is how many people break away and just give away all the gold, if you will, or the oil.
I suppose that's part of the education piece around it is explaining to them why what they have is going to be very valuable going forward.
I feel in our world, in Beeler.Tech, it's not again that we're consulting as much as we're trying to bring people together to share what they're learning, between privacy sandbox to data clean rooms to everything that's going on. But I would say at the core of it is getting publishers to say you have to have a first party data strategy. It has to be something, because getting rid of third party cookies, there's going to be a lot less signal that the whole ecosystem works with. Right? Just take what Apple has done with Safari and in their environments, right? And you just realize less signal is lower CPMs. And so we have a position as publishers to do that, but we should own it, control it, package it, and then of course make sure that it performs. And those are a lot of steps. And so that's the education that's going on right now.
Yeah, I think, it's knowing the quality is one of the big things. And how do you think that publishers can really ensure the quality and the accuracy of the data that they have and that they use on their platforms?
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because if you think this is my experience, and I'm probably going to make someone mad by saying this, but you know, there's a lot of weight put on the quality of third party data. And yet I know, and I'm sure if you went and checked to see what the third party data says about you, I'm still my 99-year-old dad, right? Like I'm him. I'm also a woman. I'm also, any number of things I've done have told people I'm of a gender of an age that's not accurate, that I'm interested in a car when I'm not, like all of these things, but yet third party data is what drives it. And you look at that and go like, so the bar is really low for third party data in terms of being quality. But when I hear, brands and agencies talking to publishers, their bar is really high. Like, I really need to know, is this really an auto intender? Like, how do you know? And you go like, why is that there's that little piece? Well, quite honestly, I think get rid of third party cookies, get rid of third party data having as much power, right? Third party data doesn't go away, but it isn't as informative in terms of the overall process. First party data will be part of the signal going forward. But I also will just throw this out there that I think the quality and accuracy of the data, there's going to be people talking about doing audits and certification and all of these steps to sit there and prove that out. And there's a little piece of that I think is disingenuous, because the fact of the matter is if my data performs, right, that's kind of really what matters. If I somehow accidentally put someone in an auto intender category and they buy a car, do I not get credit because my data was inaccurate? No, but if I do it, again, it should work itself out just in the overall performance. John, I also, run ops for golf.com, right? And I've heard agencies tell me that I index very well for golfers. And you go like, well, thank you for letting me know that golfers come to golf.com, right? And then I start talking about, I think I know which are the more avid golfers because of the way they consume content and so forth. And yet, to your point, I have to sit there and validate that in some way. But you think a third party is going to come in and tell me that I know more about golfers than I do? I'll lock the door. I kind of feel like I own that.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's, who'd have imagined that golfers would be using golf.com regularly?
We were so excited. We were so excited to hear that this agency person thought that we did really well. I was like, so yes.
Thanks, guys. It's to an interesting point though, that they can, that's the level of what's being provided, when in fact you'll be able to discern from how they use the site in, whether they are in fact someone who's looking to get into the game or whether they are already wedded to the game, playing every weekend. So I suppose that's the difference in terms of the quality of the data that's provided and how publishers can really use it.
Right. I feel like, and I look at it and go, I think that's one of the things that publishers are going to start to do is try to create content that helps differentiate their audiences within their own environments, right? That way you get that deeper thing. I feel like early Dotdash days, they did a really good job of not just saying, we have a lot of information about how to paint your kitchen, like just, or there's any number of these things. They just went deeper and deeper so that you knew that each step that person was, that was their thing, their passion or whatever. And they could build segments that no one else could build because everyone else is going wide and they went deep. And so I know that at golf, that's one of the things that we're looking at is, let's put it this way. If you're looking at a particular piece of equipment and you're doing this much research on it, or how to customize your clubs, you're really a golfer, right? You're at that next level.
You're in the woods.
So that's, I think, the thing that we as publishers have to start to do is create those. And I feel like scale will always be an issue. And I feel like the scale conversation bothers me because I feel like there's an opportunity for all the technology we can throw at things that smaller segments can work. Right? Like just the way we buy, it's like, I want an efficient buy because my buying systems work in a particular way. And you go broad and you go cheap. And there's an aspect of going like, you know what, let the AI drive some of these decisions. And it finds that these, really like small niche audiences perform, they're going to look for those. And then publishers can create those.
I think it brings up two really interesting questions. One for me is definitely in terms of the targeting to a niche audience and really kind of that being able to target at that level. The big question, I suppose, is around the user's privacy. So how we balance the effective targeting with the kind of prevailing wins for user privacy at the moment. How do you see that balance?
The balance is tough right now. And part of it is because, quite honestly, that is not being determined by us as an industry, as it's being determined by the regulators and big tech. And I'm going to keep my answer. This is one of those topics I get on my just get going on, John. I'm going to do the short version here, right? This is the over drinks thing to see me get all fired up, right? But to me, privacy has been taken into a regulation thing for countries to collect taxes and money from big tech. It has been wrapped in this topic that all of us agree that we want more privacy in our world, right? And we want users to have privacy. But the real battle is regulation versus big tech. And I feel like in the analogy I've used in the past is it's Godzilla versus Mothra, and we're all just the citizens of Tokyo, just, like whatever the collateral damage is, that's us. Yeah. And it's going to be tough for us. When regulators have stopped, big tech has stopped, it's going to be interesting to see whether users have gone and said, this is not enough, that we want to go further, right? So it's really hard to draw where the line is actually going to be. And it might be that like email addresses, data clean rooms, identifiers based on email, all this stuff passes, or it might not. So the only way, in my mind, as a publisher, to be prepared for the future is to just be focused on your audience and that relationship. And that's just such a non-technical way to think of it. But just if you can keep that trust, and then there's just another level of conversation. We can't just put up cookie banners and just hope everyone clicks accept all. Okay? The conversation has to change and say, we want data to serve you relevant ads because it's better for you. And by the way, I have not seen this done well. John, I'm literally talking like way past over my skis here, just in terms of like going, I wish I could point to someone who does extremely well. I do think there are companies, Admiral in the US, a more US focused company, does do this conversation really around visitor, relationship management. That I just love this idea of a holistic conversation, because I kind of feel like publishers think they talk to their audiences and they don't. All right, see, I'm getting away from the question. The question is, it is going to be harder to convince users to spend more time with me as a publisher if I put up any barrier than it is for me to go and try to get an advertiser and squeeze some money out of them. And so I feel like many publishers have the balance in the wrong direction. They're focused on the advertiser. Long term, you got to be focused on that user. If we can create that relationship with the user, the advertisers will actually have to come to us to try to get in front of that audience, right? Goes to my first point. None of this is easy. None.
No. And I think there's a lot in there about the value exchange. I think personally, it's something that I find is completely undercommunicated through websites. Like you say, they put the banner up, there's a checkbox, and no one's being very upfront about the benefit to the user. It's more like, oh, can we have this, rather than here's why we need this. It's not for anything, it's not nefarious. We just would like this to give you a better service. And that communication piece is it's the building blocks of trust there, which is going to be so important for publishers.
We have left this to the attorneys to advise us, right? So again, then you're seeing this we're getting caught up on this, certainly in the United States, where, I know legal teams who are like, try to use the broadest term of what we can do with data, right? And just that's in the privacy thing. Well, that's not going to pass the test. Just asking someone to accept that I can do whatever I want with your data isn't going to pass the test. So you need to come up with a way to say, you're engaging with me as a brand, as itself. I'm a publisher. I am a brand. Do you trust me? I'd like to work with you this way where I serve you ads or a subscription or these things. And we need to create ways to do that. The problem is that, again, users are on a path. They're on their path of use. And I will say this as an American, when I go to Europe and I use the internet, and I haven't gone and consented already, the internet is a completely different experience. It's like running the hurdles. I just have to sit there and continually find out where the box is and find it. And I can't do anything that I want to do until I've taken that step. And it's causing fatigue and exhaustion. And that's not accomplishing what we want it to do. So we have to come up with new and inventive ways to do that.
Yeah, I suppose that's what the mutually beneficial relationship has to look like in the future. Do you think, it's about the added value?
I do. I feel like if consumers started to understand that good content requires investment, right? Like that trust. Again, if the users start to put value on trust, and I'm not sure that they do yet, quite honestly. I mean, again, I think users use the internet right now. They know they're being lied to half the time. They decide how much they believe of whatever it is, right? Whatever their biases are. If it's against it, I'm all angry, but because I believe the other side even more, right? I mean, this is the post-factual world we live in, yeah. Right? So again, you can see why this is an over drinks conversation, John. But there's a piece of that just working with our users and to say, advertising an open internet is better than any alternative. Like democracy, this is the best option. Okay. Could it be better? Absolutely. But the idea that news could be behind a paywall and be blocked in such a way that general people can't get to it, but all the misinformation is free for you to consume, has serious repercussions. So, I mean, again, a lot is at stake, not just our industry, but so much. And I kind of feel like that's just lost in some of our ad tech talk, right? We kind of have to take it up to that level and go like, we play a part in the future. We've got to figure this out. How do we keep factual content flowing as fast as the misinformation, right? And have users understand that and choose that.
Yeah, I mean, that's we've gone from micro to pretty macro there in terms of our outlook, and I love it. I am going to move us on to a bit of future gazing now, and we will continue the ad tech conversations at ATS London. But in terms of the landscape and how it's going to evolve over the next 5, even 10 years, how do you see it playing out? Given the significance that we just
you're asking about 5 to 10 years. You're throwing a decade at me in an industry where I'm thinking quarter to quarter, and I literally am watching the news break every week. I do have some thoughts on this. Right? And this actually comes out of the event that Beeler.Tech had in New York this past week. It was called Navigator, where we heard from Travis from this company called Group Black, basically say that the product of media has changed. Okay. You used to sit there and go, it used to cost you a lot of money to make a video about, like create content about health. And now someone can just go to TikTok and they see someone that's doing in their kitchen, and that quality, consumers aren't thinking like, oh, wow, I can't watch this TikTok thing. They're eating that up. Right. So the product itself has changed, and that's going to change media overall. And then I think the way that we interface with media is going to change, because I feel like this is where we finally have with AI the ability to have a personalized internet. And I think it's going to be very conversational. Like, I'm going to go to my phone and it's not going to be me choosing as much a website as I'm going to sit there and say, what are the topics I want to hear about this morning? What affects my life? What do I care about? Right? So think about that. Like we'll be able to consume content about, like, say, Ukraine in a much more personalized way. Yours will be different than mine based on, I just want the headlines. Like, are we winning? And you're like, I want to understand really what the dynamics are, right? Different levels. But in a conversational way is almost, the problem is, how does advertising work into a conversation? I always use this analogy of, a party and someone just comes up and starts talking to you about life insurance, right? Get out. You're never invited again. So how is advertising going to work in a conversational world? I don't know, but I
Yeah.
do feel like advertising is going to have to be much more conversational, which could be very interesting, right? And we're going to have to almost say that this is time for advertising. You're going to need to consume this, or again, the dynamics are going to change. But what an impact it's going to have on that. Um, just a couple other thoughts on this, which is, I feel like one of the things in our industry that has been a blessing and a curse is that the barrier to entry economically is very low. It means anyone can become a publisher. That's exciting. But anyone can become an ad tech company. It doesn't take a lot of money to sit there and put out a shingle and try to sell people that you've got something. And there are a lot of companies that are doing that, and they're pulling little pennies out of the whole thing along the way. Move to an AI world where AI is the means by which brands and publishers say, this is the message to this is the audience, or really brand to consumer. Not sure where the publisher fits, right? But that whole piece, when you make that AI, I feel like that barrier is actually high because it's got to be a trusted thing. It's got to work. It's got to perform. And I just feel like it's just, I don't know. I guess it's somewhat easy to create an AI solution. I can use ChatGPT just as well as anyone else, but I won't have any secret sauce. And I kind of feel like that's going to be the future, is how do you even do any part of this? And then I'll just say the last thing is, and this is almost a shot, Kieran, which is anytime there's any consolidation in our marketplace, like one company buys another, oh my God, the big consolidation's here. It's all going. In my experience, every company that goes away, two or three pop up in its place, right? I kind of feel like if you believe what I said about the AI thing, and by the way, like at events like ATS, I'd love to be told I'm wrong on this stuff. I love these conversations and just kind of putting out my opinion. But there's a part where I think AI will get rid of a lot of the noise unless it performs. So I think that maybe the big consolidation actually starts to happen. And for me to say that is like 10 years of telling everyone that they're wrong. But I think I'm on the bandwagon now.
Yeah, well, I mean, AI it's sort of defining how this year is looking, at least, and I'm sure it's going to be a huge part of ATS London in terms of the conversations. And I'm also going to try going to a party and just casually mentioning ExchangeWire and trying to slip content into my conversation, advertise our brand. Um, just to finish off, Rob, like we are really looking forward to welcoming you at ATS London in June. How are you feeling about the event? What are you looking forward to most of all?
Yeah, I'm really excited about being involved in the event, not just attending. Again, it's one of the conferences I love to come over to London and see. Someday I'm going to do Singapore, John. I've got it on my list, but no, the thing with London, again, I think it's a great event to pull it together. I'm excited to help MC in the first day, a few conversations focused, on the sell side, and integrate that conversation into some of the other things at ExchangeWire. And then day two, I'm working to have some publisher breakouts, right? And we're going to talk about AI, and we're going to talk about sustainability, and we're going to talk, I'm even going to throw it out there if I can fit it in, is direct sold, which is almost counter to us as an industry who love to talk about programmatic. But there are more ways to transact than just programmatic. Some of those other pipes do exist, and I want to talk about that. Our format is more roundtable. I'm going to get people in a room chatting and talking and just saying, how do we move forward? Which is everything that you're talking about and everything you asked about, is how do we go forward from here? And I'm excited to have those conversations.
Amazing. Well, really looking forward to it as well, Rob. Thanks so much for joining me today. And thanks for your time. Looking forward to catching you in London. Take care.
Take care. Thank you, John.
And thanks everyone for joining us. That was today's Vox Pop.